back here at the Government Center, and I'd like to thank the mayor and the council for allowing us to use this. Today is Wednesday, August 18th. The time is 7 o'clock. Mr. Aho, would you please call the meeting to order?
Mr. Curtis?
Here.
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Felber?
Here.
And Mrs. DeFabio and Mrs. Gordon are absent.
Okay, Drew is here. And would you please stand for the pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We welcome all of you in attendance at the meeting and those watching online as always. If you are here for the public participation portion of the meeting and would like to speak at announcements, please make sure you fill out a blue card and hand it to Mr. Avo, our treasurer. Thank you. Mrs. Powers, do we have any addendums to the agenda?
Actually, we have one item to be removed, please, Madam President. On the classified spreadsheets, if you would kindly remove the contract of Emily Norris. And Mrs. Norris took employment elsewhere, so we need to remove her name from the agenda for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda item change?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Felber. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. All right, that item passes 3-0. On to my president's report. Try to keep it brief because there's a lot of important recognitions here tonight. Yesterday, I was honored to attend the convocation welcoming back our staff, as well as welcoming new staff members. Many staff members were also recognized for milestone years of service and dedication to our schools and our students. 10 years for Mrs. Powers and several years for several others. And for that, I thank you. This year's event was held at the Percy Amphitheater, and it was just an incredible venue to be outside and to get together with all the staff. And it was a week. They will be attending soft openings. Be sure to check your emails for important updates. I know you're getting a lot sometimes, but check on those. Don't rely on the kids all the time. Over the past several weeks, we've received emails from several parents voicing their opinions about the school reopening plan, masking, and other issues. For those of you who have emailed us, we thank you, and we appreciate hearing from you and your thoughts. For those who have answered previous surveys that have been presented to the parents and families, we thank you for that as well. Regarding the masks in schools, unfortunately, this has become a very politicized matter that has put our children right in the middle of this. The governor, CDC, Health Department, American Academy of Pediatrics, they're urging all students to be masked at least in the beginning of the school year. And our number one priority always is to keep our children safe and make sure we can keep them in school every day. And regarding the reopening plan, we will be having discussion among the board later in the meeting. I heard a real interesting quote from the keynote speaker yesterday, and I just wanted to throw it out there. It's not mine, but she said, it's how you deal, not what you're dealt, that really matters. During this pandemic time, all of us have had to learn to do new things. Being flexible and forgiving can help weather this hard time together and safely. And no matter where you stand, what your thoughts and position is regarding the schools, the reopening plan, I urge you to please continue to have conversations with your child that promote a positive school experience for the upcoming year. Our kids have proven just how resilient they are and have learned to adapt to change in ways we would have never been able to predict a few years ago. So please continue to support your kids and our teachers as you always have. And I want to thank you for your time, and this concludes my president's report, so I now turn the meeting over to Mrs. Powers.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, new staff members who are here. Good evening, residents who are here as well, and those watching us via live stream tonight. We appreciate your interest in the work of the Board of Education. Board of Education, as you know, this week we welcome back to school campuses our educators and members of our classified staff as they begin to settle into their classrooms and engage in professional development. Next week is our soft reopening week, as Mrs. Davis indicated, and our back to school information, including SNAP codes, has already been mailed back to our parents, and we hope that you have received that information. If you have not received that information by now, please contact the Board of Education office, and we'll be happy to reissue the information. You need that information in order to register or actually update your child's information in our system. Board of Education, in your folder tonight is a copy of the annual report and district calendar. It is now on its way to our homes here in the community via U.S. mail, and I'm hopeful that our community members will find it useful. It's very interesting. Of all the things that we print, that particular document is the one that our parents and our residents and our senior citizens too have always an interest in receiving. So we're very pleased to provide that to our community, and it includes a lot of information about last school year, a lot of information about this coming school year, and of course Mr. Aho's annual report is included in that calendar as well. This evening we have two discussion topics to share with the board. The first is in regard to the in lieu of transportation and impracticability, and that'll be presented by Mr. Welker, our business manager. And the second discussion topic is our district's reopening plan for the coming school year. During the presentations, we'll be sharing PowerPoint with the community, and also look forward to your conversation and direction on both of those topics. But before we get to those important matters, we have wonderful new members of the staff to formally introduce to you. I said to many of them as they came in the door, now it's really official. Once the board meets you, you're signed, sealed, and delivered. So Mrs. McKinney will be doing the presentation, the introductions this evening. But Board of Education, please know that she has seemingly worked around the clock all spring and all summer to recruit and recommend the finest talent for our students and for our school community. So this evening, we're excited to introduce to you the members of our class of 2021. This is our certificated group. On September 1st, we will be then introducing to you our newest classified members of the staff. So Mrs. McKinney, if you want to please come forward. And for the administrators who are here this evening, as Mrs. McKinney is introducing the staff from your building, if you would kindly come forward to greet your new staff as they're introduced, we would appreciate that.
Good evening, Board of Education and residents. I'd like to start our introductions of the class of 2021-22 with Twinsburg High School. And the principal is going to start. He can't go up and greet the other employees because he's new as well. We're going to start with Brian Lynn, principal. He's a graduate of Ohio University, former assistant principal at Mayfield High School, Chardon High School, and Hilliard Darby High School. After 9 years as an assistant principal, he is ready for the head seat as principal of Twinsburg High School. Brian Lynn. We have a lot of staff members to introduce, so if we can just applaud them by building, that would be great. Ryan Luman, assistant principal, Twinsburg High School. Graduate of John Carroll University, former social studies teacher at Mayfield High School, where he taught U.S. history, AP U.S. history, AP economics, government, and he was also a member of the Blended Learning Initiative for Mayfield City Schools. Ryan Luman. Kyle Archer, graduate of the University of Akron. He's an intervention specialist at Twinsburg High School. Comes to us from Springfield High School and Springfield Junior High, where he was the in-school suspension tutor and online learning coordinator. Prior to that, he was an intervention specialist at Cleveland Central Catholic. Kyle Archer. Peter Hampton, vocal music teacher, graduate of Otterbein University. Peter was choral director at Lakewood High School. He left that position to pursue his Master of Music and Choral Conducting from Boston University. He has now returned to the area to become the vocal music teacher and show choir director for Twinsburg High School. Here I am. Haley McClunky, English teacher, graduate of Cleveland State University, completed a long-term substitute position at Avon Middle School before accepting her first teaching position at Twinsburg High School and becoming Mr. Lynn's first hire as principal of Twinsburg High School. Haley McConkey. Antonio Pereira, Spanish teacher, graduate of Cleveland State University, returning for his second year as a long-term Spanish substitute at Twinsburg High School. Christina Pistone, is quarantine support teacher at Twinsburg High School. She's a graduate of Kent State University. She has a degree in integrated social studies. She has worked various jobs, waiting to land her first teaching job. She is returning as the quarantine support teacher at Twinsburg High School. Christina Pistone. Please join me in celebrating the new staff members of Twinsburg High School. R.B. Chamberlain Middle School, Mr. Reese, if you join Mrs. Powers, please. Michelle Loudon, Assistant Principal at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. Michelle Loudon has worked in the district as an assistant principal, science teacher, and administrative intern. She is returning to the administrative role as the assistant principal at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. Michelle Loudon. Joseph Higgins, science teacher, graduate of Kent State University, worked last year as a long-term science sub, but is returning this year as a full-time science teacher. Teaching is a second career for Mr. Higgins, as he was a watershed education specialist before returning to college and getting his teaching credentials. Joseph Higgins. Alicia Henderson, school counselor, a graduate of Eastern Michigan University, comes to us with 18 years of school counseling experience from the Bedford City School District and Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Alicia Henderson. Wendy Nito, art teacher at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. Not new to Twinsburg or to this position of art teacher. Wendy has been an instructional assistant in the district for many years and stepped away from that assignment to take the one-year position of art teacher at RBC. She did such a good job, so when the position was renewed, Mr. Reese did not hesitate to rehire Wendy Nito. Kara Scrudders, Beach Brook social worker, graduate of Ohio University, graduate of the Ohio State University. She comes to us from, she comes to us from North Coast Behavioral Hospital and has completed service with the U.S. Army. Kara Scrudders. Matthew Utz, quarantine support teacher for R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. He's a graduate of Kent State University. He was quite the utility player last year as he filled 3 long-term sub positions and did a great job in all. So when the quarantine support position came open, he was a natural fit. Matthew Utz. Robert Tarleton, PE teacher, graduated from Arizona State University after serving 15 years in the United States Air Force. After leaving the military, he wanted to find a job where he could mentor youth, be around sports, and wear basketball shorts to work every day. PE teacher checked all the boxes, so he enrolled in college and got his PE teaching license. Robert Tarleton. Please join me in welcoming the new staff members for R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. George G. Dodge Intermediate, Mr. Holland, will you join Mrs. Powers, please? Nicole Fetterman, art teacher, a graduate of the University of Akron. Nicole held several art sub-positions and was most recently the Education Outreach Coordinator of the Kent Museum of Art before accepting this job as art teacher at Dodge. Nicole Fetterman. Spencer Genos, PE teacher, graduate of Twinsburg High School. Spencer completed his senior experience with Dominique Sanders in PE and caught the education bug. He attended Ohio University, obtained his PE teaching license, and never looked back. Welcome, Spencer Genos. Eugenia Green, quarantine support teacher, Eugenia has been an administrative substitute with the Twinsburg City School District since 2015 and is returning for her second year as quarantine support teacher. Eugenia Green. Abigail White, intervention specialist, graduate of Bowling Green State University, worked with special needs adults at Abbey Ritzman Bitters Farms, and she also worked at Whirlpool in the blender department before landing her first teaching job, having graduated from college in May. Abigail White. Christina Biasato, Title I reading teacher, a graduate of John Carroll University. Christina has worked at Incarnate Word Academy, Hope Academy, and the Goddard School. She was hired on Thursday and attended new teacher orientation the next day on Friday. Christina Biasoto. Please join me in welcoming the new members of the George G. Dodge Intermediate School staff. Samuel Bissell Elementary School. Mr. Winter, will you join Mrs. Powers, please? Kayla Benzie, classroom teacher, third grade classroom teacher, graduate of Twinsburg High School also. Kayla decided early in her teaching career that she wanted to work at Samuel Bissell Elementary. She continued to sub at Bissell and waited for a permanent position to become available. Last year, she subbed in a virtual position and did an excellent job. So when the need for an additional teacher at Bissell came up, hiring Kayla was a no-brainer for Mrs. Johnson. Kayla Benzie. Melissa Cogan, quarantine support teacher. She's a graduate of Bowling Green State University. She comes to us with 15 years of experience as a reading tutor and primary teacher. Melissa is returning for her second year in the role of quarantine support teacher. Melissa Cogan. Lucas Walter, music teacher, a graduate of Heidelberg College, taught in a community school in Columbus, Ohio, served as percussion instructor for Mid-Park local schools, and completed a long-term sub-position in Fostoria City Schools before joining us as a music teacher at Samuel Bissell Elementary. Lucas Walter. Please join me in welcoming the new members of the Samuel Bissell Elementary School staff.
You know me so well.
Wilcox Primary School. Mrs. Villa, please join Mrs. Powers. Michelle Syrick. Michelle Syrick is a preschool intervention specialist, half-time and half-time instructional assistant. She is a graduate of Kent State University. Michelle left her role as an instructional assistant in the Twinsburg schools to do her student teaching and obtain her teaching credentials and her master's in special education. So now she's returning to Twinsburg schools to put that to use. Michelle Syrick. Ann Larson, quarantine support teacher, comes to us with 25 years of elementary teaching experience in the Brecksville-Broadfield Heights School District. She was a quarantine support teacher last year and is returning in that role for this school year. Ann Larson. David Oakley, art teacher. After being honorably discharged from the United States Army, David attended The Ohio State University and obtained a Master of Art Education degree. He subbed in several districts before being hired last year as a long-term sub art teacher. When the position was renewed, he was the likely candidate. He is returning for his second year as art teacher at Wilcox. David Oakley. Please join me in welcoming the new members of the Wilcox Primary School staff. All right. District Administration. Alex Popovich, Curriculum Supervisor. After 18 years at THS as Athletic Director and Assistant Principal, Alex is bringing his talents to Central Office to assist with the curriculum work and making sure that our teachers and students have the most current educational materials and training. John Summers, Supervisor of Maintenance and Custodial Plant Services, comes to us more recently from the Bedford City School District. Prior to his 22 years at Bedford, John worked as Maintenance and Custodial Supervisor at Stowe Monroe, Falls City Schools, and Ravenna Schools. John Summers. And that concludes our new certified hires for this school year. So thank you, and welcome again, everyone.
Board of Education, I'm really proud to introduce, we have Mrs. McKinney introduce this fine set of educators. You know, it all happens in the classroom, and we are excited that you'll be joining us as members of our teaching staff, supporting our kids, members of the administrative team as well. And that's where the magic happens. The magic happens in the classrooms. And I know that the first day is just a few days away, and I know as soon as you greet our kids, the magic will happen in your classroom. So thank you so very much for your interest in serving the children of our community. We look forward to being your colleagues for very many years, and look forward to hearing all about the great things that happen in your classrooms. On behalf of the Board of Education, thank you for your interest in our schools. It's going to be a great career for you, and we look forward to seeing what you're going to do for the kids of our community. And that concludes my report for this evening, Mrs. Davis.
All right, thank you, Ms. Powers. At this time, do we have any committee reports? No? Okay, good. Moving on to F, remonstrance.
Mrs. Davis, if I can interject.
Sure.
The staff is, they've come out this evening, but I know they are working tomorrow, so this would be an appropriate intermission time if you would so choose to enjoy your evening and prepare for tomorrow.
And thank you for coming and welcome again. Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Jim's always good about closing the door. Jim's always good about closing the door.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to remonstrance item F. Persons wishing to address the Board of Education should submit a blue card found in the lobby to the treasurer prior to the meeting so they may be recognized by the board president and welcome to make comment. No formal action will be taken on subjects that are not included on this agenda until the board has had the opportunity to study them. Comments regarding personnel must be submitted in writing through the office of the superintendent. Although there is normally adequate time for citizens to express themselves at board meeting, if several people wish to speak, each person will be allotted 5 minutes until the total time of 30 minutes is used. Each person addressing the board is asked to give his and her or her name and address. And we do have several cards, so we will need to, unfortunately, keep it to the 5 minutes so that we can continue on with the board meeting. I appreciate anybody who's brought a card. So our first card we have is from Meredith Matthews. And then remember, when you come up, please just state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Meredith Matthews. I'm 1741 Chestnut Trail Drive here in Twinsburg. I actually have a video that I wanted to present to you. I'm sorry, I was trying to get it. It should be ready to go. I guess I just kind of wanted to start off with saying that COVID obviously is here. I mean, I'm not denying that. So is the flu. And when flu came along, we just kind of deal with it. I don't want my kids to be, COVID's here to stay. I don't want my kids to be masked for the rest of their school career, or my grandchildren. So that's my feeling on it with the whole mask issue is it's gonna be like a flu, we're gonna deal with it, but I don't want my children masked for the rest of their school career. So I apologize, I'm gonna try to get this video up and running here.
And let people draw their own conclusions. Here's the facts. With a lot of respiratory pathogens, they get transmitted through large water droplets, especially when we cough and sneeze. Now, the primary mode of transmission of SARS-CoV-2 is through aerosols. So there's three sides of the water droplets that can come out of your lungs. Large water droplets, so those are droplets that are over 60 microns. They have this trajectory under gravity, right, where they quickly fall to the ground. Then there's small water droplets. These are between 10 and 60 microns in diameter. And then there's what we call droplet nuclei, which are smaller than 10 microns. So when we talk about aerosols, we're talking about these droplet nuclei and small water droplets. And if you want to visualize it, when you go out in the cold air in the middle of the winter and, you talk about I can see my breath, that's the aerosols that you're breathing in. That's the aerosol condensing in the air. You see a big plume, and it doesn't just drop to the ground. I wear glasses, so when we breathe on, the lenses and fog them up, the moisture we're getting on there, that's the aerosol. Scientific studies before this pandemic have shown that low-cost masks, and so we're talking about surgical masks and the cloth masks we're wearing, these low-cost masks have pore sizes that range between 80 and 500 microns in size, so a huge range, right? The diameter of the virus is 1 micron. The largest possible small droplet that comprise a typical aerosol and 2 viral particles is 62 microns in diameter. So let's put that in perspective. The smallest pore size is 80. So that means the largest droplet coated with the virus can pass right through. Now, air is always going to travel, the easiest way out. So most of the aerosol leaks out, going up above our nose. The other leak points are right at the cheeks here. What people will say is, okay, there's leak points, but if I have a properly fitting mask, surely, what you said can't be true, right? So let me see if I can show you this. We've been told to use up to 3 masks. So I've got one, and I actually don't know if I'm going to be able to get all these on, because one of the things that's interesting, actually, my right ear pinna now is permanently deformed a little bit. It sticks out from my head more than the other one. Because of all the mask wearing. But so let me put on, here's 2 masks. Here's,
Oh, come on. I apologize, I'm sorry. I cannot get it to come back up. But his point in the end is he puts on 5 masks. And the 5 masks he put on still do not prevent anything from coming out. So I'm not going to mask my children 5 times. I mean, 1 mask isn't going to do it. They don't work. They do not work. And there's no point in masking our children for a virus that it doesn't affect these young kids. It just doesn't. If anyone would like the video, I can try and send it to you via email. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Brad Matthews.
Hello, Brad Matthews, 1741 Chestnut Trail Drive. So I did a little investigating into your bylaws, and you're not only breaking federal and state laws, you're breaking your own bylaws. Section 000 of the general bylaws, nowhere in that section does it actually specify that the board has medical authority over our children. It's based all around education. So you guys are stepping over bounds
when you're getting into our kids' medical prevention. In the Code of Conduct, Bullet B, it also says you will obey the laws of Ohio and the United States. So drop down to section 8450.1 which addresses facial coverings. So within there's several statements. One says that the superintendent would issue periodic guidance, so guidance through the Board of Education plans and resolutions in alignment with public health officials and or in accordance with government edicts. So far, everything has been a recommendation. There are no laws around this. You can recommend all you want, but if I say no, I don't accept the recommendation, you cannot force us to accept it. Within that section, you also state that the board may require that students in second grade and higher shall wear a face mask unless they are unable to do so for health or developmental reasons. You say consideration for the student's identified disability or social emotional needs will be given. You also say cloth face mask covering should not create difficulty breathing while worn. That's section C. And then exceptions to the use of a face mask include when facial coverings in the school settings are prohibited by law or regulation, which we'll get to. Face coverings are in violation of documented industry standards. They're on the box. They say it doesn't help. There are no standards because it doesn't exist. Therefore, they're all in violation of industry standards. Part C says facial coverings are not advisable for health reasons. So anybody who has asthma or any other type of respiratory illness has the right to opt out of this. And C for individuals who have difficult wearing a cloth mask covering, so special needs children that might not be able to wear them. So not letting parents determine what their child should do based on their medical and or mental condition is against your own bylaws. So back into the laws being broke. The Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, since this is an emergency of the pandemic, masks are considered a medical device. There have been no studies showing masks actually work, which make it experimental. So in the email I sent you guys last week, I asked to provide in this meeting any any things that were done to prove masks actually work. So I look forward to hearing if you found any. Since this is an emergency medical device, wearing a mask is, and it's an experiment, that it violates the Nuremberg Code. So in the Nuremberg Code, you must be given consent, or you must give consent to be part of the experiment, and we do not consent. The experiment must avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering or injury. This week, you're gonna hear a lot more, but last week we've shown clear studies, and I've sent you guys an email where the experts have said long-term issues could arise from our children wearing masks. So it also says the risk of the experiment should never exceed the problem. Given the vulnerability of children to this virus and the risks that the masks exceed, it's more than what the virus is going to give them. I showed you boxes saying that the masks don't work in the last meeting. I also forwarded you a box stating that the materials in the mask may cause cancer. So we're gonna potentially risk our children getting cancer to protect them from a virus. Doesn't make sense. Title II of the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination. Anyone who cannot wear due to religious beliefs cannot be forced or discriminated against. Americans with the Disabilities Act defines a school as a public accommodation. If your student has a medical reason to refuse, you cannot discriminate or force them to wear it. And your bylaws specify the same. So students with asthma and difficulty breathing are exempt if they choose so. So the DOH director's orders that came out. The requirement to wear the mask does not apply to anyone under 10 years of age.
We'll need you to finish up, I'm sorry.
Couple more statements. They're prohibited by law, and they're in violation of documented industry standards. So I urge parents to sign the right to refuse document and submit it to the board. I've already done that and submitted to you. I also ask you to look up the Manchurian syndrome by proxy. We are abusing these children. When you look that up and read what that's about, you'll know why.
Thank you.
So-
We do need to move on with the next, I'm sorry.
Okay. And one last thing, there is an email in your inbox from a lawyer stating all of this stuff and next steps if you guys choose to pursue taking our rights from us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have Jane Weiss. And please state your name and address. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jane Weiss. I'm at 2586 Maple Drive in Twinsburg. I'm here as a concerned resident and taxpayer and to support the families of Twinsburg with school-aged children. I care about the type of education that my tax dollars are providing. I'm here to speak to your heart about the damage that's caused by masking. Humans are created to be in relationship with one another, so much so that a human infant cannot survive without relationship. Humans die in isolation. Covering a face is a major disruptor to the ability to communicate and to relate to one another. It stifles the breath of life. Masking children is child abuse. It is psychological and social conditioning. I want to remind you that there are no laws requiring face coverings in schools. As the last man testified, it's only recommendations. There's a lot of political bullying and peer pressure going on. I realize you're under a lot of pressure, but I want to remind you that the 5 of you, 3 who are here tonight, are accountable to the citizens of this community who elected you. You do have the power and authority to make your own decisions. You do not have to follow recommendations from anybody. You have the power and the authority and the responsibility to respond to the people who elected you. You can make your own decisions as other districts in the state are doing. Several parents have provided testimony over the last several meetings and asked for masking to be optional, and I urge you to please honor their requests. Masking damages people, and you have the power to prevent that. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Matthew Weekly.
Yes, my name is Matthew Weekly. I reside at 10760 Ravenna Road, Unit 203. That's here in Twinsburg, Ohio. Tonight, the Twinsburg Board of Education will be voting on the impracticality of transportation for approximately 123 students spread out over 15 schools. 3 of those schools are schools which cater directly to special needs children. I stand before you all as the parent of one of those students, one of the special needs children, the most vulnerable of our children. My daughter, who previously attended Wilcox and will be attending Julie Billiards in the fall because Wilcox was unable to meet the requirements for her care. She is one of the 21 students who will be potentially affected by the decisions tonight in regards to transportation to Julie Billiards as well as the Hawkins School, 2 schools which are only a third of a mile apart. Per Superintendent Power's own words, 15 students is typically the cutoff in terms of practicality. We're talking about 21 students in just that instance. In our previous meeting, Superintendent Powers was adamant that the school district does not put a price tag on their students. However, that's exactly what is happening here. My wife spoke before you previously and shared the fact that the transportation quotes she received from the one transportation company that would actually speak to her because she was not affiliated with the school district quoted her the sum of $6,000 for transportation to and from the school. That would be your price tag for the student. However, the administration is holding on to a technicality, a loophole in wording that says transportation may be obtained from a participating provider qualified to provide transportation services. If a child is parentally placed in a non-public school and is in grades 6 through 8, the child may be entitled to transportation through the district. A child parentally placed in non-public school and in grades 9 through 12 may be offered transportation by their district of residence. However, the child is not entitled to transportation. That would be the loophole that I see being held onto here. As the parent of one of the 123 students that you are potentially going to deem impractical, I'm asking you to take my daughter, who is actually here in the audience with us tonight, into your considerations. The administration wants to do the best that they can for the students. We've been told by many members of the administration that they always want to put the students first. That's what I'm asking you to do here tonight. Put the students first. Don't let these students, the 123 students, be just a number on a page or a dollar amount on a fiscal report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Jordan Weekly.
Take your time.
So fast. Good evening, board. My name is Jordan Weekly. I live at 10760 Ravenna Road, apartment 203, Twinsburg, Ohio. I come to you again pleading that you reconsider for the special needs children on this plea for transportation. It's not just my child, but there are 3 schools that you have listed and deemed as being impractical. I ask you to reconsider that the special needs community, especially the most vulnerable students that you have in your district, you know, have some sort of option when it comes down to it. You know, I don't want to go into details about some of the stories. Mrs. Powers does know of them that have happened just in Esther's care with you guys. And I ask that you guys reconsider the fact that you consider it impractical to transport them. You know, at this point, like, I even ask that you bring up a list of people that you have contacted personally for transportation that would drive. Because I can't even get them to talk to me because I'm not a transportation company. I don't know what else to do to ask. I ask this because I'm not the only parent. And I get it that, like, sporting events are more important than our special needs kids. You know, like, you are willing to drive buses to and from with sporting teams, but you can't drive our special needs kids to these private schools, as you refer to them. I understand that I didn't allow you guys to make that decision on where she would go. Partially because I didn't want her to end up at a school where I have seen kids who have gone there who have special needs like hers end up in psych wards afterwards due to this very school. I understand that I also apparently was given wrong information last year about who I was supposed to contact about all of this. But I ask you to reconsider this whole transportation for our special needs kids. There should be some sort of, I don't know, something. Like, I can't believe that, like, our special needs kids are considered lower than our sports teams that we have. Like, that's the part that, like, boggles my mind, and how we approved 3 different transportation companies that we could use, but they can't transport our special needs kids. The approval of the companies came last meeting. I sat through the whole meeting to make sure that I heard everything correctly. And I ask you guys just to reconsider this thought. Like, I feel like, if anything, this should be looked at differently as if she was a special needs child, and not just she, but anyone else. And I brought her here so that when you guys do decide to say no, I would like you to say it to her face and not just behind some door, you know, say it to the children that are special needs, that they're not important.
That's my feelings. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Matt Grant.
Matt Grant, 1887 Westwood here in Twinsburg. Good evening, board. I was here last week and I spoke regarding masking, and I'm here to speak about masking again. You stated, Mrs. Davis, it's become a political issue, and it has, and that's disgusting. The health of our children should have nothing to do with anybody's politics, no matter where they stand. I've presented science. Sadly, I don't think that matters. I think people just believe what their side says anymore. So I just want to, I don't believe that we should be forced to mask our children. I think we should have the option. So what I'm attempting to do tonight is to have you guys be able to see through my eyes a little bit and what I'm seeing from this side as opposed to what the people are seeing from the other side, because that's what we have to do. There's no question our children mean the most to all of us. We want the best for our children. I want the best for mine and for the other children as well. So there's a couple issues I have with masks. One of them is the fact that asymptomatic spread is just not a practical thing. It doesn't happen. If you don't have symptoms, you don't have a viral load that's large enough to spread a disease. And if you don't have a disease, you certainly don't spread it. Our children are healthy, and if they're not, we keep them home like we've always done. The other thing I don't like about the masking is the science. We say follow the science, follow the science. I submitted some more research. I emailed it to the board this week. I got a couple responses letting me know that you had received it, and I appreciate that. That was from a doctor who was an editor of a peer-reviewed medical journal for years. He reviewed thousands of articles, and he took all the research he could find, and he went through it to determine where he stood on the masking issue. And again, 5 minutes doesn't allow us time to go through it, but if anybody wants to see what I sent, I urge you to ask the board members to forward that to you. I just got this article. The NIH director, Francis Collins, just was on an interview on the Hugh Hewitt show, and his quote is that masking rules for kids are based on rare anecdotes and not data. So as far as the science goes, I don't know where people are pulling the science from. The science I see shows that there's more harm than benefit from the masks. So this policy, this mandating masks is asking my healthy children to put their health at risk for the illusion that they're going to help somebody else's health. And I just don't see how that makes sense in anyone's world. People have the right to mask. They do. People have the right to feed their children bad food that's going to make them unhealthy. My biggest issue with the masking is I feel like people think that if I don't want to mask my children, it's because it's an inconvenience to my children. My wife and I have taken many active measures throughout our lives as parents to ensure the health of our children. And they're not always convenient. I have 2 teenagers that have a bedtime that's earlier than most of their children. Trust me, or most of their friends. That's not convenient. We read labels and we don't eat high fructose corn syrup or genetically modified foods or artificial sweeteners. And that's not always convenient. We make sure we set time aside for our faith. And with 3 kids in sports, that's not always convenient, but we put it up front. Because all of those things matter to the health of our children. If this was about convenience and the masks worked, I would have no issue with that. It's not inconvenient to put a mask on, but the mask changes the physiology in a child's body. That's unacceptable for a board to mandate that. I feel if you guys read through what I sent, you might be able to see it a little differently. And I don't even know how you see it. I'm just assuming since you have masks on, maybe I shouldn't do that. But please take a look at what I sent. Look it over. Let's come together. I'm not here to bash heads with anybody. I'm here to try to make sure my kids and the other children can be as healthy as they can be. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think it's all our blue cards. And thank you for speaking, all of you. Okay. I guess I'll take that. Thank you. Okay, and state your name and address, please.
Katie McVeigh, 7928 Maiden Meadow Drive, that's Twinsburg Township. Just to say, or just say, good evening, Board, thank you for having me back. First, I'd like to apologize, last meeting, speaking out of turn, that is usually not like me. But I hope you guys take that as a maybe not a compliment, that I feel that strongly about masks. And to play off what Mr. Grant had just told you guys, none of you guys have kids in Wilcox. So I don't know if you guys have seen a Wilcox mask. This is my daughter's from last year that I've washed over and over. It comes home every day stained with mac and cheese, spaghetti, peanut butter and jelly. She's sitting in a stained mask for 4 hours a day. That's on her face, that's in her mask, she's breathing it. It's really gross. And I wash masks every day. That's part of what we do. Not all parents wash their masks. Think about those kids that are sitting in germ-filled things that parents don't wash, because not everyone has certain levels of hygiene. They don't have the ability, maybe they don't have the time. So I hope the teachers are paying attention to that, because none of my kids' teachers could see this. No one knew that they were sitting in grossness. And that's something we have to be aware of with our little ones. I don't know if we need to talk to the lunchroom aides or whatnot. So that's an issue. My daughter would chew on hers, which again is disgusting. We know that kids are germ factories. We can't control that. One day they came home, I've got twins, both their masks were soaking wet, and I said, what did you do? And they said, we can drink our water through our masks. And nobody caught on to the fact that their masks were soaking wet and they're drinking water through the outside, through the inside. There's a lot of health complications. They're getting directly into their body, everything we're trying to keep out. So can the older kids wear them? Yes. They know the rules, they understand. The younger ones, they know they have to wear a mask, and we can try to explain it to them. Some will get it. Unfortunately, some won't. Mine did not fully understand, and I know that they're not the only ones. So when we think about masks, that's something we do have to take into consideration, that they don't know the proper way to wear them. I think we can all agree that everyone says a mask is only effective if you wear it properly, if it's properly fitted to your face, if you're not touching it. God forbid, we know the little ones sneeze in it. They're sitting in their sneeze, their snot, their germs. My kids have allergies. They sneeze a lot. Again, gross is going to be the word of the day, and that's what they're sitting in. 8 hours of grossness. And it's exactly 8 hours from the time my kids get on the bus to the time they get home. My one first grader told me she likes math or likes recess and lunch the best, because that's when she gets to take her mask off. These kids are losing so much with this. We're teaching them that school is a place to be fearful of germs. We can go everywhere else in society right now without a mask. Everywhere else is optional. So people can do that if they prefer. So why can't you let the parents make the decision and know that their kids are capable or are not capable of wearing a mask properly to help prevent more germs from getting into their system. I know none of you guys have young kids in the school, so I just want you to be aware that the young kids do have a problem wearing masks correctly, and that there are some other issues that you have to be concerned of. You're not going to probably find that in a study, but it's happening in our school district. I can give you guys each a mask to prove how gross they are, even though they've been washed and everything like that. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, on to item G, discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. This evening, we have two items to discuss with the board. The first is the in lieu of transportation that you find on the agenda tonight, is along with the topic of impracticability. And so Mrs. Farthing is going to call up a PowerPoint, which Mr. Welker will walk you through, and then we'll engage in a conversation thereafter.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. Basically, we just want to talk through the laws surrounding payment in lieu of transportation and practicality. So, Ohio Revised Code, Section 3327.01 is the code that refers to permitting Board of Education to decide whether payment in lieu should be, occur for students where it's impractical to transport a pupil by school bus. Basically, furthermore, 3327.02 allows the Board of Education to determine if a school or a group of students would be deemed impractical. Annually, we've been doing that through our approval of the bus routes for the last several years. This evening, those routes are on the agenda for your approval. And in addition, we took it one step further and added the impracticality resolution too, to just make sure that we had both of those elements on the board agenda. At the last board meeting, we talked about there's quite a few changes coming down the pike with House Bill 110. That is fully effective in the 22-23 school year. And it actually goes into effect September 30th of this year. So the recommendation is that we follow as much of these effective changes as possible for this year as well, effective September 30th. So our intent is to try to do as much as this. Of course, a few of these weren't possible because of when House Bill 110 became in effect. So some of those components, number one is that on July 1st of each year, the start and end times of the non-public schools or community schools need to be provided to the district. That gives us time to review those start and end times and incorporate those into the routes. Then 30 days prior to the 22-23 school year and each year, we would then notify parents if there's a decision of impracticality. But what they're trying to do is move all the decisions up compared to what it's been in previous years. Another component of House Bill 110 is that student drop-off and pickup time. We honestly tried not to do this, that you can have it earlier or later than 30 minutes prior to the start or end of the day. So for arrival, if the school start time is at 8 o'clock, you're allowed to drop off as early as 7:30. And then if the end time is 3 o'clock, you're able to drop off or pick up as late as 3:30. I know our transportation department has made that quite an effort to make sure that the students that we are picking up, that they're treated just like our students. So for instance, with St. Rita's, we worked real hard at making sure that we stayed in a line with what what students at Wilcox and Bissell might experience. Furthermore, and this is a practice we've done already in House Bill 110, public schools need to provide transportation to community schools even if we're not in session. So we certainly do that. During our professional development days, I would say we have at least half of the drivers have routes during professional development days when we're not in session. And then also what we talked about last board meeting, effective September 30th, they're raising the minimum in lieu of transportation reimbursement. In the past, say almost 99% of the districts in the state were providing the 250 limit. They have raised that to the 50% of the amount that ODE determines to be the average cost of transportation, and that's for the general ed population. That's how it's defined in House Bill 110, and that's for the previous school year. The most recent data that we have is from the 1920 school year, which was $1,077. And we're still turning in our data here at the end of August that will determine the rate for next year. So then some of the other components to consider, there's basically 7 components that you can look at when determining whether a district should consider making payment in lieu instead of providing transportation. So those areas, number one, this time and distance required to provide transportation. So actually in that case, if a student lives 30 minutes outside the district, we are not required to transport. We're not required to do in lieu of transportation either. So there's actually a timing test that would happen if it has to be during school conditions or during the school day, and timing a route. So if there's a lot of traffic on a route, that's also considered in the 30 minutes.
Mr. Walker, just
Yes.
as a clarification, you mean 30 minutes from their home to the school, not 30 minutes where they live outside of the district?
Right. Thank you for
Make
that
sure
clarification. It's actually from the school of attendance to the school that they wish to attend.
Okay, so school to school.
So that's it's not home to home. Second factor would be the number of students transported. Third would be the cost of providing transportation in terms of equipment, maintenance, personnel, and administration. Another one would be whether similar or equivalent services provided to other students eligible for transportation. So we want to make sure that we're providing like services. Whether and to what extent the additional service would disrupt current transportation schedules. And then finally, whether other reimbursable types of transportation are available, and that could be whether like taxi services, other reimbursable types of transportation are available. So those are the 7 conditions. When we look at the resolution, the items or the schools that are identified tonight really fall under the category of the number of students transported. So what we typically look at is the number of students that and whether it falls under a threshold generally around 20 students. And what we also consider is making sure on the 20 students, not only that they're eligible, but that they intend to ride the transportation. So all the schools listed are under the 20 except for one. But with that situation, when talking with the principal,
We were told that there's only 9 families that are interested in taking our transportation, 9 students. So even though there's 24 eligible for St. Barnabas, there are 9 students who have identified that they would be interested in transportation. And just to give context of a bus, our buses currently are holding 48 kids in a bus. So with that, we wanted to open it up for discussions or any questions regarding the Ohio Revised Code.
I don't have any questions relative to the Ohio Revised Code, but the list of schools disease remain fairly the same from year to year, or do they change?
Yeah, so these schools have been fairly consistent over the years. I think these are the same exact ones as last year and the last couple of years. The only exception to that would be, remember last year we only transported K through 8 students. This list includes the 9 through 12 schools again this year, and that's because we're providing high school transportation.
Thank you.
We're 2 years out from when we would have to follow House Bill 110 in terms of this year or next year, even though it's because it's saying September 30th.
Theoretically 1 year.
But the action that we took last meeting was a 100% increase in what we paid for last year's. And we're often compared to the other districts, and there wasn't a single district around us that was paying any more. So we're the first district to go 100% more than what we've done in the last number of years, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, with the surrounding districts that we surveyed, all of the surrounding districts were providing $250. When you look at the state average of what has been provided in payment in lieu, actually it falls a little bit below $250 because you actually are allowed to pay prorated. So if a student attends half a year, they would wind up getting $125 or that 50% of the school year amount.
So 9 were interested for St. Barnabas, and we have 24 listed.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so you'll note at the bottom that we provided this as an approximate as for some of them. We just received St. Barnabas here today. They provided 21 eligible students, and when talking to the principal later this evening, she informed us that there are only nine students who are interested in taking the bus.
So these numbers are provided by the schools themselves?
Correct.
Based also on the parent has filed the paperwork for in lieu of transportation?
So we get informed of these students, and if they are new students, we will then provide the form to them after being notified by the
As well as the appeals process?
Correct. There is an appeal process that is explained in the form.
Right. And to my recollection, we haven't had an appeal, at least in the last 8 years that I can recall, when this has come up every year. I don't know if that's
accurate.
Tina, you and I were the only ones that have been here 8 years.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever an appeal. Ms. Powers, do you have one that has ever, okay.
And then, well, yeah, we haven't, I was going to ask you to explain the process of appeal. We haven't had an appeal, but should that happen?
The appeal process, it's in regards to the determination of impracticality. There would be a mediation first to talk through the reasons, like what reasons we're providing as far as the impracticality. some of the other 7 components certainly apply to some of these, but the primary driver has been the number of students attending. Because we do try to provide wherever we can, and we've worked at trying to even combine different things where we can. We've talked with neighboring districts about if they would be interested in cooperating with us on doing some shared services, because we certainly want to try to help wherever we can. And so those are certain things that we do. That would be part of the review of the mediation process. If it's not mediated, then it would go to ODE to be decided at that level. And they would review that process.
Okay, so I guess my question on this is, for the, I don't know if this is something for discussion with when we get to it on 10, but for the impracticality transportation. So as of like the last meeting we approved for the previous year, with this, should this be approved, we're ensuring that these students get their payment towards the $500 that we decided, and should they have a concern, they would be able to after this appeal. I'm just want to know that.
This resolution is actually just approving the impracticality piece. We don't know what the rate will be set at. So in the future, when we find out what the average cost of transportation is for the prior school year, so the 2021 school year, the year we just finished, then we'll be able to approach that situation too, because then now the minimum will be set of the 50%, and then we would be doing that. So this is just talking about impracticality for the students themselves, and in our form we would provide them information about what the board authorized the prior year.
And that funding, just for everybody's knowledge, is determined by the Ohio Department of Education after collecting data from all the routes from all the districts, which is why that amount doesn't come out till September, October?
Right. So we're actually in the process of collecting the information for our T1s and T2s, and so that information's due at the end of August, I believe. So that information is compiled. It takes some time for the state to compile all the districts, and then once we find that information out, we'll present that to you as well.
Two separate resolutions. This is impracticality, the other is the financial.
Right.
I don't have any more questions.
Any other questions? Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Board of Education, the second topic is the district reopening plan. I guess I should call it the revised district reopening plan. As you know, on June 23rd, the board authorized the initial reopening plan, and when the board authorized the initial opening plan, we did that to sort of frame the year, but understanding that we didn't know where the Delta variant was going to go. We didn't know a lot of what we know today. And so since June 23rd, we have been very aware of the data that has been collected. We have been speaking with medical professionals. We have been in weekly contact with Commissioner Skoda from the Summit County Public Health Department. She hosts a superintendent meeting every Wednesday afternoon, and the only thing I do want to say is that the district was successful in operating last year because we paid attention to what the advice is from those who are in the medical field, the ODH, the Summit County Public Health Department, CDC, and I want to just pay special thanks to Donna Skoda and her staff because, as I've said before, board, I am not a doctor, an epidemiologist, a scientist, and an educator. And when Senate Bill 22 happened, the governor is no longer able to mandate masks and neither is the local health department. So that puts the responsibility on boards of education and superintendents to recommend to the boards. And again, most people who represent communities on boards of education are not medical professionals, and most superintendents are not either. So in our field, what we do is we pay attention to the experts in the field, and we try to make recommendations based on the information that we're able to collect, and that's what my intention is this evening. I'm going to present this evening, board, my recommendation based on all the things that I have been listening to, all the things that I have been watching. I want to thank our parents in the community who are medical professionals who have been very responsive to my request for advice, feedback, assistance. They have been troopers in this, understanding that they have information, they're much closer to this virus than I ever will be. And so I appreciate their guidance, and again, appreciate the guidance of Summit County Public Health, ODH, and the CDC. I want to begin tonight by just reading a tweet by Governor DeWine from yesterday. Yesterday afternoon at 3:54, Governor DeWine tweeted out, to all those who are making decisions right now about our schools, if you are not requiring masks, please think about this again. At the very least, consider requiring masks for the next few weeks when we know the spread level will be very high. So this evening, board, I'm going to present my recommendations, and I'm interested to hear your feedback once I have recommended here. What you'll notice on our plan that I am going to present, it's a pretty lengthy document. It just doesn't talk about masks. It talks about the entirety of launching a school year in a COVID environment. We're still under a pandemic. The Delta variant, according to Commissioner Skoda in her call today, is very contagious, extremely contagious. Those were her exact words. And coronavirus continues to be what we're called as a Class A reportable disease. And so all of the reporting that happened last year, the dashboard on the website, the letters to our families, the reporting to Summit County Public Health officials, all those requirements remain intact for the coming year. And so our parents will continue to receive, if not weekly, sometimes it was daily, information from me, trying to be as transparent in the communication as we can possibly be. So of course, our mission always is unwavering commitment and unlimited possibilities for our students, and we believe that this plan will get us there. Many considerations when you're talking about reopening the school district, not under normal conditions, but under a pandemic, and these are the same things that we pay attention to last year when we launched the school year, that I would suggest that families would say, for the most part, was quite successful given the environment under which we operated. You know, board, we moved buildings, we moved students, we moved staff members, we kept this district open, we didn't flip and flop from one to the next week. It was because we paid attention to the advice given to us from the folks in the business of science. And so I appreciate guidance they provided to them last year. I appreciate the guidance over the summer months here as well. In the middle of everything, of course, are the students. And we have to remain focused on ensuring that the environment upon which they learn is as safe as it can be and supported by all those individuals as you see up here on the screen. And you know, it's not just about one student or one family. When we're talking about working in the environment of a pandemic, it's about the greater good. It's about ensuring that everyone is safe and everyone can be successful because we're paying attention to the facts for not just one family or one situation, but for all. Again, my recommendations this evening continue to be tentative because in a pandemic things change. So the recommendations this evening are subject to change, and you will see as we get into this a little deeper that we will be evaluating this plan and potentially making recommendations to change the course throughout the year, given whatever data we have to make those decisions upon. So our guiding principles, obviously, educational learning is what we're about. And board, thank you for once again allowing parents to have a choice. First, the in-person instruction is available to all of our students. And of course, we have our fully online option for students in grades K through 12. We'll be talking about that here in a little bit. And that's through the Ohio Online Learning with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio. And we look forward to launching that with our students. Not very many parents have selected that. I think we have less than 40 kids now enrolled in that opportunity, but for those students, this is an opportunity that we're happy to support. Health and safety, of course, are extremely important, and we continue to pay attention to what advice and good guidance we're receiving from those branches that are noted there. Social emotional learning is a big component, and we want to make sure that the environment upon which we base our academic learning is supported with wellness efforts. And I'm very grateful to Dr. Walker. She's done a great job last year in the pandemic and continues to do so, ensuring that we're mindful of putting into place, programs and efforts to ensure that kids are feeling good about themselves in school and supporting the well-being of all. And then, of course, the operations that support what happens here all have important parts to the initiative of opening a school year during a pandemic. So a little bit about the Twinsburg Online Learning Academy through the Ohio Online Learning Company. Last year we called it the Twinsburg Virtual Academy, and as you know, Board, that was an effort that was 100% supported by your educators that work here in the school district. This is not that opportunity. This is different. This is virtual online learning for students, but it is not being taught by members of our staff. The teachers that are going to support our students through this effort are employed by Pearson, and they're all certified as Ohio educators, but they're not employees of the Board of Education. The difference here between what we offered last year and what students participating in the online learning opportunity for this year is that primarily students in this platform are learning online. Last year, they learned online, but they had daily support from our educators. Educators were logging in, kids were learning directly from teachers. And in this environment, the students are learning primarily independently. And so that's why Board, in the early part of the spring, we talked through a rubric for eligibility for students to even be eligible for this online learning platform, because not all students can learn independently. Some can and do a great job, but online learning is not for all. And so when our principals called the parents who had applied for the online academy here, we asked the principals to make sure that they talk through what this looks like, and it is going to be different than a child's experience during the last school year. So that's an important determiner here for some of our kids. Students who are enrolled in our online academy must log in 910 hours of online and independent offline work. And so there has to be a log that is kept, and there has to be documentation that is kept, and that there's a system of checks and balances, because we then have to report to the Ohio Department of Education that either the student did or did not meet this 910 hours of online and independent offline work in a school year. So that is a new requirement that was not in place last year. There has to be a teacher of record to document the work being completed by the students, and that's just not the online work that the Pearson teacher is supporting, but also someone who is recognizing that there's offline independent work away from the computer screen that is part of the school experience for these students. Pearson is going to provide a student learning advocate, and their main role is to be in contact with the student and their parents to make sure that the student is actually keeping up the pace with the lessons. So you have the teacher that's a Pearson employee, and then you have the student learning advocate that is an additional layer of support for the students, not the teacher of record, but somebody who's paying attention to the fact that the student is either keying in or not keying in, staying on course, on pace or not, and in frequent communication with the parent and the student. And then also Pearson will be sending manipulatives home to especially elementary students. Let's think math class, right? So sometimes the students have to use manipulatives to understand a concept. So there's those manipulatives will be mailed directly from Pearson to students' homes. I think I mentioned this at the last board meeting. There will be 2 orientation sessions for parents and students, and they are scheduled for Thursday, August 26th at 9 a.m. or Friday, August 27th at 2 p.m. Parents do not have to attend both. It's one or the other. And links will be sent to families for these orientation sessions sometime next week. So Mrs. Farthing is in the midst of registering families who have now passed through the rubric eligibility screener. Principals have called all these families. We know who the children are. Mrs. Farthing is finalizing the registration process with the ESC. Once that is completed, then we will be sending the links, and Mrs. Farthing and I are participating in these orientation sessions next week so that families understand the requirements of their children participating. Any questions about the online learning? It is different, and we want to make sure that families understand this is not the same experience as last year. This is quite more independent work online than what the virtual students were engaged in last year. Okay, thank you. So, let's get into the other parts of our plan. So, of course, we're excited to welcome back the majority of our students to on-campus learning. Our custodial staff has done a fantastic job of moving thousands of books and boxes back in place. Teachers had one day this week, classified staff to help settle back in the classrooms. And convocation was Tuesday, as Mrs. Davis indicated. Today and tomorrow are professional learning days, and I thank Mrs. Farthing and Dr. Walker and Mrs. Honeycutt, Mr. Welker, Mrs. McKinney, and our professional development team. We've heard nothing but positives about the opportunities that have happened today and will happen again tomorrow. And then Friday's a day-to-day to take a look at student progress from last year, looking at some test scores, getting ready for soft reopening, which is next week. But this part of the plan does not change, board, and that is our intention with social distancing. We knew from our survey of our parents last year and our staff members that people were comfortable with social distance between 3 and 6 feet. And so Mr. Welker and Mr. Brunton and the custodial staff were very busy this summer. They remeasured all the classrooms. We understood we would have many more children back on campus. And so what we are anticipating here is that social distance will be at least 4 feet. And we say at least because in our bigger classrooms, like our kindergarten rooms, it's larger than that. But at least 4 feet between our preschoolers all the way up through 8th grade. And then for students in 9 through 12, the social distance will be at least 4.5 feet. The classrooms at Twinsburg High School are very large, and so we can spread out the students out a little bit greater distance. What I would like to recommend, board, in addition to just the classroom settings, is a couple of things here when we're talking about other venues. And the first is our indoor venues. So when we talk about the gymnasiums, particularly at the high school, as well as our auditoriums, we will be continuing the practice of social distance when we sell the athletic tickets, when we sell tickets for, let's say, the orchestra concert. Our staff understand that there's a limit to the number of seats when you're talking about social distance in the inside. So it'll mirror what happens in the classroom. We have social distance in our classrooms and our hallways, so when we have events inside the buildings, we will continue to utilize the social distance requirements for those events. We are going to move the RBC home volleyball games over to Twinsburg High School. Those were at Twinsburg High School last year. It worked out quite well. Mr. Fantone and Mr. Schwed, who helps with the middle school activities, are able to make the schedule work. And so All volleyball games, whether you're a high school student or a middle school student, will be at the high school, and that allows for increased capacity with regard to parents coming and watching the events for volleyball. What I would like to suggest is when we're talking about our outdoor events, for example, at Tiger Stadium, we would not be expecting there to be the social distance requirements for a football game, a soccer game, for cross-country meets, for any of those things. However, if individuals are not vaccinated, we are strongly recommending that they do wear masks to the outdoor activities. So that takes a little bit of a different turn, one that I think would be well received by our students, especially, last year, none of the high school students were able to support their friends at football or soccer because we were limited in the number of seats due to the social distancing piece. And I would like to suggest that we can make that happen so that high school kids can watch their friends play football or soccer.
And that was a lot of schools too. I mean, when we went to visit, they limited the amount of tickets you can purchase to go to the games, and it's going to be. That's all I have to say. But it wasn't just unique to Twinsburg.
Right, and last year they had compliance officers. The OHSAA is not doing the compliance, not the compliance officers for districts, but they had compliance officers from the state level that they sent to all of the games. And it got to the point that the kids on the sidelines had to stand on certain places for social distance. Remember, this is pre-vaccination, so we were very, very careful. So that is a bit of a change that I'm going to recommend, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. The other thing is tickets for the athletic events as well as athletic passes will be sold online, and there's a website there. It's a link to a website. We use hometown ticketing. Mr. Fantone would very much appreciate ticketing done online. It takes away some of the extra work with county cash and all of that. And we're able to offer athletic passes online in the same portal as the one that's noted here on the screen. So we would like to continue to do the online ticketing. It made things a lot more efficient for our staff. We would suggest that the families of our athletes would have priority in purchasing. So what would happen is, as we're, this week is Copley. So let's say Copley was home. It's not, it's at Copley this week. There would be a certain amount of days that would be the time for our families to buy their tickets first. And then we would be selling the tickets to other members of the community or students who want to come. So that is, I think, a good option for our school family. And then finally here, the auditorium and ticketing last year, Mr. Kahn and Mr. Bonnets did a great job of helping manage events over at the high school. Actually, Mr. Bonnets used the gym for the band events last year. I don't know what his plan is for this year. We haven't had a chance to talk to them. They're just now coming back on campus. But with regard to the auditorium events, we need to have a little bit more time to talk with the teachers and figure out the social distancing piece. Because again, those are inside, so that would be a little different. Inside events would have to have the social distance between family groups. But outside, the recommendation to you this evening is to allow that to take a little bit of a less restrictive measure. And then finally, through the survey that we did in June, our families absolutely love live streaming. Mr. Kirtley, Mr. Welker, and our student technical workers did a great job last year with the live streaming. And then we also understand that Community Focus is going to help us. We're pushing out a new way of live streaming that we hope to partner with them too. So, but until then, Casey and our students with Mr. Welker's assistance will be live streaming our events, and that just gives you the channels. So we'll be posting that here shortly as well. Any questions about the social distancing piece that I'm recommending here?
Not really so much about social distancing, but so we're going to have the online tickets. What happens in the event somebody shows up and like a grandparent didn't realize they had to purchase online, what happens in an instant like that?
Do you know what we did last year? I don't know that.
So we're working on some kiosk type concept as far as having a link at the gate. And then, of course, in the instance of a senior citizen, they are provided a free ticket as well.
That's true.
But also, if somebody doesn't have access to technology, we'll certainly help them out and with another device.
Yeah, because I think it was few and far between last year, but that's just one thing I wanted to understand. All right.
Okay, the next is about Tiger Health and Wellness. This falls really under Dr. Walker's purview. We have been so appreciative of her work as well as that of Jennifer Pinckney, who is our district nurse. Nurse Pinckney did a great job last year in communicating with our families and really kept us healthy and safe, and I know she's going to do the same this year. We made some adjustments here. Again, Nurse Pinckney is our full-time district nurse. She's been here probably 3 years as our full-time district nurse. We appreciate your support of that board. So at each of the campuses, you'll notice the number of clinics that we are going to have. 2 at all of the campuses, with the exception of the high school, will have 1 clinic. And all of those clinics will run for the, let me back that up. In each of those schools, there will be at least 1 clinic that will run the duration of the school day. So from the minute the kids walk in the door till when they leave at the end of the school day, there will be a health professional and a clinic open to help with any particular needs that the students may have medically and that of our staff members. And again, the Ohio Department of Health says that anyone with a temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit should stay home from school. And I have to point that out. That is a change from last year. Last year's 100.4. And we all looked at that this week and said, oh, that's a change. Not by a lot, but they changed the regs on us. So throughout this document, you'll see now that it's 100 degrees. That is the benchmark, or I should say, we'll send a student home from school if their temperature was 100 degrees or higher. On the right there is the listing of COVID symptoms. And so the practice we have here and that of other school districts is if a child or staff member were to experience any of those symptoms, the good practice here is that the child or staff member were to stay home because they are symptoms of COVID. Now, board, the next document talks about quarantines, and I apologize, it is so tiny on here. When we distribute this to our parents, we'll be able to see it better. There are 3 things that have to all be in place here in our school district in order to avoid quarantines. Number 1, we have to have social distance in place of no less than 3 feet. And again, it goes back to what has happened over the summer months with our custodial staff under the leadership of Mr. Welker and Mr. Summers, measuring everything. Chad and I were at Wilcox, was it last Thursday and Friday, and we saw something we didn't like and we had to remeasure things again. And so that is a continuous process here before kids are back to ensure that when they're in classes, they're sitting at least 3 feet, and actually they're 4.5 feet in our school district because we're able to make that happen. Secondly, there has to be a series of COVID prevention practices in place, and that would be all of the sanitization, the temperature check when the children and the staff arrive at school. We have those monitors now, much like the city has one here. Actually, we heard about it from Mr. Curtis from his school district with the monitors, and then Mayor Yates had it, so we were able to purchase those as well. And the sanitization, the frequent hand washing, having hand sanitizer for the students and the staff, the ventilation. Mr. Welker, can you just speak a little bit about the ventilation and the enhancements in that arena for the board's consideration?
Sure. So with ventilation, what we're doing is going through our control systems. We did this last year as well, but the recommendation is to make sure you're increasing the amount of outside air coming into the system. So that's one of the tweaks we're making, in addition to having a regular filter rotation program. So With those practices last year, we had no evidence of spread within a classroom. So we think that those techniques have certainly been helpful.
Thank you. And then, of course, the whole masking thing has a large play in how quarantines may have to occur and the number of kids that are involved. And basically, wearing a mask will avoid a lot of the quarantines that otherwise would have happened without masks. Board of Education, I want to talk with you or just share a couple comments they were made by Commissioner Skoda earlier today. And it goes along with my next slide here, talking about masking and facial coverings. Donna said, and I'll quote her, "If you are masked, you are protecting everyone. We need to wear masks so COVID does not have a place to mutate. We are fearful of a mutation that will not respond to 3 vaccines that are currently working." She went into great detail about the fact that they've been watching the number of people that are in ICU as of today and on ventilators. She said Cleveland Clinic Akron has 31 people in the ICU with 14 on ventilators. And it's very serious. Board, as you know, my stepdad's in the hospital, went from Cleveland Clinic here. We could not find a hospital bed for him north. He's at Medina Hospital because there was no room up north because of the number of people who are in hospitals now with COVID. So it is a reality. It's a scary reality, and one that the health folks are very much paying attention to. She also said it's time to protect everybody, not just vaccinated or unvaccinated people. And she went on to say, why wear a mask? If not, we are never getting out of this. And that was Commissioner Skoda during our superintendent's call this afternoon. So board, based on all of the evidence that I have been looking at, based on my conversations with our parents who are medical professionals and the information that they have sent me, based on Commissioner Skoda's recommendation, based on what the governor is recommending yesterday and his plea for schools to consider masking all. This evening, my recommendation to you, based on all of that, concern for health and safety, and out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to recommend that the district would require masks and facial coverings for all students, kindergarten through grade 12, as well as all staff members who may have direct contact with students while they are indoors. What I do want to say, board, is this thing is moving daily. The pandemic continues to change. So what I recommend is that we get underway with this recommendation, this requirement that I'm suggesting the board would authorize. And then 6 weeks out, we take a look at what we know, take a look at what the science is telling us, and the board can then determine whether or not it should lessen its restriction or make it greater. And I think that that would be a good plan, because we shouldn't be doing a plan today that would be impactful for the entire school year, because this is going to change on us. And if this thing mutates, it's a whole nother story. So I think that if we can have confidence in watching the science for the first 6 weeks of the school year, understanding that it is not a decision that is for the entire year, but rather for the first quarter of the year, and then making further recommendations to you for your consideration at that point, and then making adjustments as necessary. I would say that our preschool children, and many of which who are students with disabilities as young as 3 years of age, some of them are challenged by wearing masks. So for our preschool students, masks would be strongly recommended, but we understand the complexities of working with our youngest children. Sometimes the masking just doesn't work. However, the staff that would be supporting them would all have to have masks on. And masks would not be required for outside activities or for physical education classes where students are busy and active, participating in those kinds of classroom instruction and opportunities. Questions about masking and facial coverings?
Any questions?
I don't have any further questions. We've discussed this many times. I'm not gonna waver from where we started on March 13th, 2020, an emergency Friday night board meeting at 6 p.m. You stated you're not an epidemiologist. None of us are. It's unfair that the state has put this on us, but yet here we are. So I'm gonna continue to stay. I'm gonna stay with the recommendations from Summit County Board of Health, Ohio Department of Health, CDC, and our government as identified. I appreciate all the information brought before us. I would hope maybe that information could be put before the Summit County, Public Health. Those are the people we're listening to. So, as many people that have come to speak to us in person, we've had just as many emails on both sides of this. Nobody's going to be happy. No one likes wearing them, but here we are. So, I'm not going to waver in support of your decision any more than we have all year.
I'll just comment on a few things. I do agree that, this is just really unfortunate. This has been a year and a half that we've been put in a position of having to make decisions that, we really shouldn't be making as board members. But as Mr. Felber said, here we are. Throughout this entire time, we've really taken the guidance of Donna Skota, and I have to tip my hat. I know I've thanked her 1,000 times in prior board meetings for her diligence in keeping you informed, keeping us informed as a board as this thing continues to change, and it has. We've always been very clear since day one that as the circumstances change, and we pivot, we do. And it is always based on recommendations that we get from not only her, but all of the agencies that you listed, Mr. Felber, as well. I mean, that's been pretty consistent as long as we've been in this pandemic. What I also do appreciate, and Mrs. Powers, you didn't mention this, but we got information from all of the hospitals as well. Akron Children's Hospital, Cleveland Clinic, Akron General Hospital, as well as the SUMA Health System. And they all concur with these recommendations. I said I don't profess to know everything about medical science. I am an educator, have been for nearly 30 years, so I have a unique perspective and can look at things through both lenses, as a board member and also as someone who has to work in a school district, and I have to be around children and I have to be around staff. So I definitely, understand the anxiety and also understand the fear, not only with the children, but also the staff that have to interact. There's a lot of fear out there. And so I always try to be sensitive. Mr. Grant, I did read the information that you sent. And I do try to weigh all evidence and all information. I try to be as unbiased as possible because I recognize that people have very strong feelings on both sides of this issue. That being said, since it has become, my responsibility as a board member to make a decision, I'm not going to abdicate that responsibility. I'm going to, continue to follow the guidance that we have all along. I think that it's been pretty remarkable that we've come to the place that we are, and we've been able to be relatively successful in educating our students in one of the most difficult environments that I've ever known as a professional in education. This is unprecedented, and I know that word keeps getting worn out, but I don't have any other word to describe the circumstances. What concerns me most in this particular instance is is how strong, or how virulent this particular strain is. A lot of people are being hospitalized. People are dying. And children are being affected. Children are being hospitalized as well. And so one of my primary concerns, and it's something that weighs heavily on me, is that, you know, doing something contrary to what I've continued to do throughout the last year and a half, and there's an adverse effect, a very serious adverse effect for any of the students that we're responsible for. I don't know that that's something that I want to have on my conscience. Over 4,000 students, hundreds of staff that I have to think about, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm pretty consistent with any recommendation that I would support. And thus far, you know, the professionals that have offered us the guidance over the last year and a half, we've taken that guidance, and it's allowed us to function in as normal a capacity as we possibly can. So that being said, I'm in favor of supporting your recommendation, Superintendent Powers. I do feel that it's prudent to continue to revisit things, and we've done this consistently throughout the year. But I think that these intervals that you are recommending are frequent enough that if something changes, we can adapt and move accordingly. There's nothing more that I would love not to have to wear a mask. You know, but this is where we are right now. This is the world we're living in. I'm hopeful that it's not a lifetime. I'm hopeful that you know, in months, you know, we can move back and perhaps maybe move to, you know, what we had previously recommended. But at that time, the circumstances were completely different than they are now. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, spoke on that because I was not here at the last board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And yeah, I want to be right now where we were a year and a half ago, not even, you know, a little more than a year and a half ago, not even a thought of this. We're not there right now. We're just not, I'm sorry. And, I mean, it is unfortunate that this has come to us, and that the, you know, the weight of making sure our students are in a safe environment where they can feel protected, where, you know, they can come to school every day. It's, you know, it's a weighted on us. I mean, I know just for whatever reasons, we know that parents have in the past, before COVID even was here, would often send their kids to school sick, give them some fever reducers, send them off, in a few hours their fever's back, and by that time they, you know, possibly expose some of their classmates. This is on a different level. And because of how highly contagious this is, I would hate to see an entire classroom shut down because of one child. And what I do, you know, I've seen research, I've seen what people have sent me. I work at a pediatrician's office where I question the pediatricians all the time about these things. And I mean, I know people have done their own research and have really been proactive about this. That doesn't mean we haven't, like, we've ignored what we see and what we're hearing from people. However, I mean, this piece of information I have came right from my work from the Cleveland Clinic, and who I trust. They're world renowned in healthcare. I mean, I can go on and on, but as a reputable source, I trust what they have to say. And just one thing I'll point out in here is this Delta, and I'm not trying to instill fear in anybody. I mean, I'm trying to use common sense with my family. We take precautions, but we're living our lives too, and we're doing what we can to keep ourselves safe. But this Delta is twice as transmissible as the original COVID-19 strain. It's the most prominent strain in the U.S. where Delta has been detected in more than 80% of the cases that they're showing. And in all 50 states, they're experiencing Delta variant, with the Delta variant, significant spikes. I mean, that is concerning. It's concerning, but since this has come to us, it is, up to us to do whatever we can to keep our kids safe. I mean, I don't ever want to be in a situation that, something happens with somebody and say we just didn't do enough because of peer pressure or because of, not peer pressure, but because of pressure we've, nobody really wants to walk around with these things, but we're trying to do our best to keep everybody safe. I went to go to the Solon Library today to print something before stopping off at home and changing for the meeting. And I don't know, a week or 2 weeks ago, no problem. They state if you've been vaccinated, you're not required to wear a mask. We highly recommend if you are not. Today, walking into their doors, you were not allowed to walk in unless you had a mask. They said no exceptions unless you're under 2. I was reading the sign carefully, and they said no exceptions under 2. I'm starting to see more and more of that lately. And obviously, the doctors and offices, you can't walk in the building without that, but that's a different situation. And like I said, I as of now, I would be in favor of the masking for all the students right now to keep it on a short term, or we're going to reevaluate. Like you said, in 6 weeks, I think that's reasonable. And also, as of now, we're not unique. And I mean, more and more schools are starting to require that. If you look around, they're starting to do that, and they're starting to lean over to either under 12 or the entire district. And we, like I said, we don't want to be in this situation, but we are. That's what we're faced with right now. I had some other notes written down, but and Adrian Gordon had sent us an email. She wanted this read as well since she couldn't be here tonight. So I'm going to read this too. This is Adrian's words. I apologize I cannot make tonight's meeting. Earlier this week, I was notified that I had been exposed to a breakthrough COVID case at an indoor meeting. While I am fully vaccinated and understand I could still attend masked tonight according to CDC recommendations, out of an abundance of caution, I have decided to not attend any indoor public events until I pass the 5-day initial period with no symptoms and have a negative test, which is already scheduled. After that time frame, I intend to mask indoors for the interim. Regarding my opinions on the district reopening plan, given I now know of 4 breakthrough COVID cases personally in the last few weeks, I support masking for all students and staff on opening of the schools. Other districts are revising the topic often, and I also support revisiting the policy frequently as things evolve. Regarding opening the facilities to outside organizations, I support allowing this as long as there's agreement that these organizations adhere to the COVID policies of the given time frame. For internal performances such as band, I support public attendance without masking and social distancing. For athletics and outdoor events, I do not believe we need to limit that attendance. And I just wanted to make a couple other comments before we continue on. I mean, we talk about the social emotional part of this as well. And just right now, because of highly contagious this is, like I said, this can shut down a whole classroom. And I want you to also think about too, you talk about social isolation. So you send, a kid has to go home because his class is quarantined. So now you've got this child who's socially isolated from his peers, from his teachers. You've got a disruption in the family schedules and trying to scramble to find out what you're gonna do with your kid and how you're gonna be able to take off work and how you're gonna be able to make this all work. You're scrambling for childcare for a student who's been exposed, and how easy is that going to be to get childcare for exposed child when, who's who really, you know, it's gonna be hard to find somebody who's gonna wanna stay with your child when they've already been exposed. There's disruptions on both sides. And it's unfortunate I'm so appreciative too that you've come, people have come in to voice their opinions. And we've gotten also several very strongly written emails from parents who are really angry that we're even considering not asking people to wear masks. And it's very strong feelings on both sides. But at the end of the day, right now, for the time being, you know, unfortunately, we're not the experts, but it's our job to rely on the experts. And I know there are pieces of information here and there that people keep relaying, and but I tend to like relying on the experts is our best option right now. And I just want to make sure that we're keeping our kids in school, because nobody wants our kid. I don't want my kid being at home virtual for weeks at a time, and our schools being home virtual weeks at a time because their classes are shut down. That's not a good place where I would want our kids to be right now. I probably could go on and on, but I'm just going to end it at that. We've read Adrian's letter. You know where she stands. And this is, we're projecting for the first 6 weeks of school at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. There's still more.
I'm sure, yes, definitely.
Thank you, all three of you, for adding, and Mrs. Gordon for offering to an email her opinion. I appreciate that. Board, included in the plan, Mrs. Farley, thank you right there. We have the CDC recommendation for what to do when a staff member or a student becomes ill. And so we will be instituting this process similar to last year, and we'll be posting this for our families and staff members so they understand what happens and how long you have to stay out if you test positive and such. But it's all there. I don't want to worry about reading it to you, but we'll have that posted for everybody. I want to remind all that we do have the Binex Now COVID-19 kits available at the board office, but we ask that if a parent has a case where they want to test their child at home, that they contact our district nurse, Jen Pinkney, and you can always reach her by email or at the board office, and she will assist in providing the Binex Now kit to the family, and there's instructions right in the kit for anybody. And that's just not for our students and staff members, but anyone in the community that needs to have a test kit. We have hundreds available for this, and we're happy to share them with anybody who is a resident of our school community. Board, just a few more slides, I think. First, about meals. We just wanted to reiterate that breakfast will be enjoyed by all of our students in the classrooms. Students in grades K through 6 will enjoy their lunch in their classrooms, but because the middle and high school campuses are so much larger, we're able to accommodate some of the students will have lunch in the commons or cafeteria at the 2 large schools, and then some kids will eat in the classrooms, and then we'll rotate it so that kids have a chance to eat in the commons cafeteria as much as possible. So that's an adjustment from last year that we're happy to make. We appreciate Mr. Bendis and all of his work behind the scenes to make this happen, as well as our food service staff. Again, this year, all kids eat for free. Any student who wishes to have a breakfast or lunch, there's no cost for our kids to do that. That is through the USDA Summer Seamless Meal Program. We do ask, however, that parents who believe that they would otherwise be eligible for the federal meal program still go ahead and apply for eligibility, because eligibility is helpful for parents to obtain a full or partial reduction in fees. So that's important for families to do that. And also, the PEBT program, the Pandemic Electronic Benefits Transfer, is based upon eligibility for the federal meal program. So we want to get that information out to our families, because that benefit is theirs, but they have to qualify for the federal meal program in order to benefit from the PEBT program. So just wanted to make sure our families understand the importance of applying for the federal meal program if you think that you would have otherwise been participating. This year you don't necessarily have to, but you really need to because there are other benefits for you if you do apply. And we send a separate letter through the mail to our families, so everybody received that. We just wanted to reiterate the importance of applying if a family thinks they may be eligible. The next slide talks about our sanitization and cleaning protocols. Again, as mentioned under the quarantine slide, hand washing and sanitization will continue. We were on the front end of having things in place thanks to Mr. Welker's diligence and that of our custodial janitorial maintenance staff. We will have the hand washing, the hand sanitizer available in common areas and classrooms. Students will be asked to sanitize their hands when they get on the bus, when they get off the bus, and so that will be a common practice. We started that last year, and I think it was well received. Let's see, high-touched areas are going to be sanitized. I want to thank Mr. Grant. Oh, he left actually. But last year, he and I and Mr. Welker had several conversations about cloth-based disinfectant, and was there another way to do that? And so we were investigating this last spring, actually, and after some pilots and during spring break and then making some decisions, we're using a hydrogen peroxide-based cleaning solution this year. Works very well. It's supported by the EPA, and so making a change better for kids. And again, thanks to Mr. Grant pointing us in a different direction, we were able to do some research, and we're happy to make that happen. We have alternate classroom settings, so if a student were to become ill, meaning somebody vomits in a classroom, it's important for us to move that classroom out of that space to allow the custodial staff an opportunity to clean that space, disinfect it. So each building has alternate learning places where classes would be relocated should we have that situation happen. And then, of course, Mr. Welker mentioned the ventilation improvements and the frequent air filter changes. Those are all part of our protocols that are in place and ready to roll out. Board, the next couple of slides, and we're not going to spend a lot of time, this looks probably familiar to you because last year our reopening plan looks like this. These have been updated. So I would suggest once we post this and send it to our families to take some time to read what's on here. But we took the information that we knew from last year, we updated it with information from latest findings about classrooms and restrooms, transportation. A reminder that we now have 2 students per seat on the buses, so our buses will be all at full capacity this year with 48 children on a bus. Children are required to wear masks on the bus. That is a federal regulation. That's bigger than us even, and they've determined that anybody on public transportation, including school buses, must wear masks, and so that is a requirement to ride on one of our school buses. So that information has been updated. The other thing I wanted to mention, and we had some concerns last year about this, it is good thought that we would be driving those buses with the windows cracked, make a 1/4 inch at least during the winter months, but maybe longer than that when it's warmer. And the reason for that is it's ventilation on the buses. And I know that last winter when we were taking kids to a wrestling meet at 6 o'clock in the morning and the buses were open, there was some concern about that. Only needs to be cracked a little bit, but that provides for some ventilation to circulate in the bus. So best practice in a COVID environment. So board, the rest of this is long-winded, and I don't want to spend the time, but it's important information. We would be posting this document and sending it to our parents in the Blackboard Connect message tomorrow if the board authorizes the document in full this evening. Any other questions?
No, just a comment. This isn't your only responsibility, but it's a big one.
Yeah.
And I know how much you've been involved in the day-to-day and the Class A requirements and all the things that you've had to do in addition to continue to run a district. So I appreciate what you and the entire staff has done in continuing to monitor things when you're on superintendent calls with health departments and how Department of Health you're not being able to do other things. So we know it's more than a disruption. It's required to do, but you know, we appreciate everything that the staff, classified, certificated, and all did last year. Anticipating the same diligence this year.
Mr. Felber, I appreciate that, and a total team effort. Everybody that is employed by this board worked together last year to make sure that it was a safe environment, and everyone worked together. We were all rowing in the same direction. That's why it worked.
I guess the comment that I always chuckle about is parents in our district that work in other districts would routinely tell me everything that you're sending out, they take back to their district and put in front of their superintendents. You know, so I think that we were leading as much as possible, and in many ways the gold standard. I know not every decision is making everybody happy, but you know, I truly believe it's for the greater good.
That concludes my discussion item. You'll notice, board, that there is a resolution at the end of the agenda regarding the reopening plan. The one thing Mrs. Gordon mentioned, it's not included in here, and I just wanted to ask, she mentioned, because we talked about it at the last meeting, allowing our booster organizations to use the facilities. You know, they've been meeting virtually, they've been meeting other places, but they support our students, and they meet in the evening when we don't have students in the buildings, typically. So I would like to suggest to the board that you would allow the booster organizations to have their meetings on campus, and then, as Mrs. Gordon indicated in her email to us, as long as they understand the COVID policies and that there has to be a given time frame for when they're in the buildings to allow custodial staff to be able to disinfect before, you know, they leave for the evening.
Yeah, I think that's definitely reasonable.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I appreciate our input.
Yeah, I know
on that.
we've discussed it before, but I would agree, and, you know, we didn't know what we didn't know, you know, 16 months ago, but now I think these groups, you know, can follow the protocols, and as long as everything's done safely, I think we could do that for the district-sponsored organizations.
Thank you. I will let them know.
Okay. All right, so unless there's anything else with that, we can move on to the action items. Thank you, Mrs. Powers.
You're welcome.
Okay, action item H, personnel. 1, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the certificated licensed personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. Number 2, employment classified. Resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the classified personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the supplemental contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Curtis. Mr. Ayo, I'm sorry, is there any discussion?
Welcome to all the new staff. It's great to see the variety of educations and, you know, many of the Ohio schools represented.
Yeah, and
I think the MAC conference was well represented in our
believe so.
educators.
And I love saying that we have some Twinsburg graduates who are
Yes.
now going to be continuing on here to, I guess, to give back.
And also, I might add, Mr. Felber talked about the MAC. Well, there was one person that came out of Otterbein, which is
I noticed that.
my alma mater. Was Otterbein College back then. It's Otterbein University now. So, very happy to see that we have an alum now working for the district.
Good job, Ms. McKinney.
There we go, thanks. All right, Mr. Ayo, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes. All right, those items pass 3-0. Action item I, new business. Donation from Ohio Pile Prints. Resolve that, number 1, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts a donation from Ohio Pile Prints Incorporated, 410 Dinnerville Road, Ohio Pile, PA, 154702, Twinsburg High School, in the amount of $33.95, and that's a donation from the sale of Twinsburg apparel at local retailers to be used for miscellaneous instructional supplies per the attached exhibit. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg City School District authorizes the following personnel from the Twinsburg Fire Department to provide coverage at athletic practices and events during the 2021-2022 school year, and name and hourly rate listed below. 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approve the revised service agreement between the Twinsburg City School District and PSI Affiliates Incorporated, PSI Associates Incorporated for the clinic nursing services for the 2021-22 and 22-23 school years, as sent to the board under separate cover. Revised costs are $207,545.40 for the year 21-22 and $211,671 for year 22-23, as sent to the board under separate cover. This is a general fund expense. 4, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the service agreement between the Twinsburg City School District and PSI Affiliates Incorporated, PSI Associates Incorporated for additional clinic nursing services for the 2021-2022 school year, as sent to the board under separate cover. Additional costs will be $90,687.60, as sent to the board under separate cover. This is an ESSER fund expenditure. 5, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the service agreement between the Twinsburg City School District and PSI Affiliates Incorporated, PSI Associates Incorporated for additional clinic nursing services for August 13, 2021 for the COVID-19 student vaccination clinic, as sent to the board under separate cover. Additional costs will be $90.25, as sent to the board under separate cover. This is a general fund expense. 6, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a settlement agreement for one student to attend the Cleveland Clinic Children's Center for Autism Learner School for Autism at an amount not to exceed $63,265 for the 2021-2022 school year. This is a general fund expenditure, as sent to the board under separate cover. 7, memorandum of understanding from Twinsburg Educational Association. Resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the memorandum of understanding with the Twinsburg Education Association regarding the employment of a teacher and the need to fulfill a licensure requirement within 2 years of employment, as sent to the board under separate cover. Number 8, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a release of transportation for one student to the Solon City School District. Number 9, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the bus routes for the 2021-2022 school year. Additionally, the Twinsburg Board of Education authorizes the transportation supervisor to make necessary changes to the bus routes throughout the school year. Number 10, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education determines the impracticality of transportation for the schools and students listed below for the 2021-2022 school year per the Ohio Department of Education in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 3327.01 and the list of students kept on file in the Transportation Office. The board will determine the amount of payment in lieu of transportation once the State Board of Education provides information necessary to make the determination, and the schools and students are listed below. Revised District Reopening Plan 2021-2022. That's item number 11. Resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education authorizes the revised district reopening plan for the 2021-2022 school year as presented on August 18, 2021. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Felber. Any discussion on items 1 through 11? Anything for further clarification? Okay. Hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes. Those items pass 3-0. Jay, anything for miscellaneous? No? Okay. We'll be welcoming back students soon. I look forward to their entrance in the buildings and them being able to join. K, executive session, that the board enters into executive session at 9:20 to discuss employment and compensation of public employees as per Board of Education Policy Number 0166A, and to review negotiations with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions as employment as per Board of Education Policy Number 0166E. Do I have a motion to move, please? So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Curtis. Any discussion? We expect no action be taken. All right, Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes. Those items pass 3-0, and we are in executive session. And thank you for coming to our meeting tonight.